For thousands of years, it has been the deadest water on the planet. Too salty for fish, too bitter for plants, the lowest exposed ground on Earth. So when a routine satellite pass photographed the Dead Sea, bleeding the wrong color across its surface, the internet decided science had no answer, and the prophets did. Both of those claims are wrong. The truth sitting in those images is stranger than a miracle and harder to look away from. Start with the cameras, because there is nothing mystical about them. Satellites in the Landsat program have photographed this exact basin on a fixed schedule since 1972, pass after pass, year after year, building one of the longest unbroken visual records of any place on Earth. The lake they expect to see is a deep, heavy blue, shading toward green near the shallows, sitting more than 430 meters below sea level in a desert trench so saline that a human body floats on it like a cork. It is split into a northern and a southern basin, and the strait that once joined them has already gone bone dry. What recent passes captured was none of that. They caught broad streaks of rust and red spreading across the northern water, the wrong color on a lake supposedly too lethal to change at all. To understand why that word, lethal, is earned, you have to look at how this trench was carved. The Dead Sea sits in the Jordan Rift Valley, a wound in the planet where the African and Arabian plates are slowly tearing apart at roughly 6 millimeters a year, dropping the floor lower and lower over millions of years. The lake itself is the shrunken leftover of a far larger Ice Age body of water called Lake Lisan. Everything about it is a one-off, the lowest, densest, most mineral-loaded water on the surface of the Earth, sitting in a hole. Nothing else on the planet matches. A place like that is not supposed to flip its color overnight. This had happened once before, and badly. In 1992, the surface turned a vivid, unmistakable red, the first time the whole basin was documented doing it. And the cause was not dye, not pollution, and not the sky. It was life. The red came from microbes that thrive where almost nothing else survives. Halophilic archaea, salt lovers like Haloarcula maris mortui, whose cells carry a light-harvesting pigment, alongside Dunaliella salina, an alga that floods itself with red-orange beta-carotene to survive the glare, and it keeps creeping back. In 2021, a pool on the Jordanian side near ancient Moab turned blood red, and in 2022, freshwater sinkholes around the shore did the same. The deadest water on Earth had been hiding things that were extremely alive, and that should be close to impossible. The Dead Sea runs about 34% dissolved minerals, roughly 10 times the saltiness of the ocean, so dense it measures around 1.24 kilograms per liter. A chemistry of magnesium, calcium, and potassium that shreds ordinary cells. For those red microbes to bloom, several things have to line up at once. A flood of fresh water diluting the surface, that lighter water stratifying in a layer on top of the heavy brine, warmth and nutrients, which is exactly what makes the color a question rather than an answer. In a lake famous for drying out, where is all that fresh water suddenly coming from? The satellites answer that too, and the answer is grim. Across that 50-year record, the Dead Sea has dropped roughly 45 meters, and the fall is speeding up. In the mid-20th century, it sank about 17 centimeters a year. Lately, it loses well over a meter a year, every year. Its surface has shrunk by about a third since the 1960s. The Jordan River that once fed it has been dammed and diverted for farms and cities since the national water carrier opened in 1964, collapsing the annual inflow from more than 1.2 billion cubic meters to under 100 million cubic meters, while potash and bromide plants pump the brine into evaporation ponds and strip out hundreds of millions of cubic meters more. The lake is being drained from both ends at once. As the water retreats, it leaves a trap behind. Fresh groundwater seeps in from the hills and meets the buried salt layers the lake left in the soil, dissolving them into hidden underground voids. Then the surface gives way. More than 6,000 sinkholes have torn open along the shoreline since they were first noticed in 1980. Some wide enough to swallow a road, often collapsing with no warning at all. And those same freshwater channels, the ones undermining the ground, are exactly the diluted water the red microbes need. The collapse and the color are not two stories. They are the same event, photographed from orbit. The damage is not abstract either. Flash floods that once ran into the lake now vanish straight down into the craters, accelerating the whole process. And the sinkholes have eaten so much shoreline that most of the resorts along the northern western coast have been abandoned. Their gates chained, parking lots cracked and empty where tourists used to float. Then it gets stranger still. In the freshwater pools welling up inside some of those sinkholes, at the margins of a lake defined by lifelessness, there are now fish, real living fish, with reeds growing at the edges and microbes building tiny ecosystems in craters that did not exist a decade ago. The same broken, freshening, mutating system that paints the surface red is also, in scattered pockets, doing the one thing this place was never supposed to do. It is coming alive. Scientists did not predict it, cannot fully explain which springs are feeding which pools, and keep finding new ones as the shoreline continues to retreat. And that is where the old texts get uncomfortable. 26 centuries ago, the prophet Ezekiel described this precise basin, water flowing into the salt sea until it turned fresh, until fish filled water that had only ever held silence. A second prophet, Zechariah, wrote of living water running out toward that same eastern sea. Genesis describes the very same valley as a green garden, well watered like the land of Egypt, before fire and judgment left the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah buried under salt. So the region already carries a story arc baked into it. Lush, then dead, then alive again. People reportedly watch the satellite footage and the fish in the craters and feel the hair rise because the sequence on screen, dead to alive, is the sequence on the scroll. Nobody is claiming the pixels prove a prophecy, but the overlap is close enough to stop the scrolling. Here is the part that should actually unsettle you. What looks like resurrection is the signature of a collapse. The red, the sinkholes, the strange new fish are not a lake healing. They are a one-of-a-kind body of water tearing itself apart and mutating into something no one designed and no one can stop. The annual deficit now runs around 1.7 billion cubic meters, so nothing about the trend is reversing. The engineering schemes to refill it from the Red Sea have stalled for years, and the satellites keep logging every frame of the change on schedule, indifferent to whether anyone calls it a warning or a wonder. The deadest water on Earth is still changing color. Subscribe to see what the satellites find next.